Good evening and welcome to the High-Speed Internet Subcommittee meeting for Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, 6 o'clock p.m. We are at Conference Room 3 at Southwick Town Hall, and we are doing this meeting hybrid. The meeting's being recorded. If anyone else is recording the meeting, that's great. You just need to make it known to the chair. And that's the formalities. Why don't we do a roll call first, and then we'll get into the business. So Doug Moglen here. Ian Creswell, he is traveling. He said he would not be here. Christopher Boyd.
Here.
I spelled Kolick wrong. Tom Kolick. Not here. Chris Boyd here. Jim Crowley.
Here.
Here. Marlene Quinlan.
Here.
Fantastic. Robert Boyd.
Here.
James Johnson.
Here.
Great. Ryan Peace.
Here.
Nick of time. Jason.
Here.
You know better. I'm never going to say your last name. I'll never get it right. Jessica Bishop.
Here.
Awesome. Attendance done. First order of business is to reorganize the board. By the way, has everybody been sworn in?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You need to do that. If you were recently appointed or reappointed, you need to get sworn in. So stop at town hall and get that done. Jess? Yes?
I'm good.
Marlene and Mr. Johnson, have you been sworn back in?
Yes,
Yep.
we have.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. We're batting like 800. That's pretty good. Okay. So first is we would need we need to reorganize the board. I was the chair last year, and the floor is open to nominate a chair of this subcommittee.
I'll nominate you.
You bastard.
You're good at that.
I second. I second.
Yeah, okay.
I
Hold on.
Suzanne.
So we got, wait till we get to Creswell, because he's not here. He didn't know it yet. So that would be. Okay, so because it's a hybrid meeting, we have to do this in a roll call vote. So Doug Moglen, aye. Ian Creswell, not here. Chris Boyd.
Aye.
Tom, not here. Jim.
Aye.
Marlene.
Aye.
Robert Boyd.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Jessica.
Aye.
Okay. Would anybody like to nominate Ian Creswell as vice chairman? Since he's not here.
I'll nominate him.
Okay, Mr. Johnson. We don't have a secretary, so I'm doing secretarial duties too. All right, who made that nomination?
I did.
Yes. And who seconded the nomination?
I did.
Jim Johnson.
Jim Johnson.
I got it. Okay, quick, roll call vote. Doug Moglen, aye. Chris Boyd.
Aye.
Jim Crowley.
Aye.
Marlene.
Aye.
Robert.
Aye.
James.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Jessica.
Aye.
Fantastic. All right. Second thing on the agenda is public comment. Is there any, there's no public in the room, but if there's any public on Zoom that would like to speak or have a comment for anything that's not on the agenda, now's your opportunity. Hearing and seeing none, we'll continue on. Okay. Let me bring you a little bit up to date on where we are, because I don't think we got a chance to cover this because we haven't met since the town meeting. We had a posted meeting, but it didn't cover because of lack of a quorum. Now you've all been reappointed or appointed. So you're new. You're not new. You're not new. And the Quinlans have been with me since, Quinlan and Johnson have been with me since the very beginning, which is great. So we passed the second town meeting. We have 2 votes. We have filed the paperwork to start the MLP process. So, and now we're back with the attorneys going back and forth on what needs to be done, and then organizationally by the select board, which has to determine what the organization of a municipal light plant looks like. I don't know that we're gonna, if once we come out of that, we'll come back to this subcommittee, I think, with that, maybe. Pretty much it'll probably be this, my guess is it would be the select board is also gonna be the municipal light plant board for the time being.
Sometimes you see that,
Just,
yeah.
yeah,
So it's-
because we're not gonna operate an actual electric light plant, so we're not gonna be entering into electricity supply contracts, because we don't have the infrastructure for that. But the MLP piece, for those that don't know, what that does is gives us access to the poles and the rights of way. Right, so we now technically have that. We have also been talking to, without making any commitment, I want to be very clear, we've made no commitment to any, as a town or as this committee, and certainly the select board or the town have made no commitment to any provider as to which we're gonna go. I mean, I've read on social media and other places, it's all set and done. Absolutely not. We've made no commitments. Sir,
Has people come forward besides Westfield?
not yet.
Okay.
But we're gonna talk about that next, because I think that's a huge discussion point. So what we're gonna do is we did ask them to, with no obligation, of course, is they are helping us with some applications, if you will, for polls. And
We're
just-
starting that.
They're starting that.
Okay.
So you've been through this before, correct?
Yeah.
So, cool. So don't be
But there's
bashful.
no design that started, right?
No,
Just
nothing.
full
not at all.
applications of every pole in town.
Correct.
Whether it's needed or not, yeah.
Correct.
You can always remove it.
And then from monetarily, so this is kind of where we are. So we did start some of the regulatory filings that we need to do as an MLP. Right now, we have to figure out who can actually sign as the MLP, because we haven't formed one yet.
Yeah.
So once that's formed, then we can start to execute other documents. Right now, I think we have the select board executing any documents, or Carl that can execute any documents in the formation part of the MLP. And I think there was a signatory required on behalf of the town of Southwick for some of the poll stuff. But again, we haven't made no obligations long-term to anyone for this.
Do we know how long the process of becoming an LLP will take?
I don't, but it's not, I don't believe it's onerous. It's not bad. It's like
No.
paperwork. It's not even like this, the town's been working on this.
It's just like you file a piece of paper and you're done.
Well, it's the state. So, like this electrical aggregation thing that they're working on, totally separate from this, but they have a 2-year backlog of paperwork to approve applications. They're not like that with MLPs. I don't believe that's going to be a gate to anything.
No, I don't think it's a very long process. I mean, a lot of smaller towns with a lot less resources have been through it in the last 4 or 5 years, so it's a matter of months, I would hope.
I just have a couple of questions as a new member.
Absolutely. That's why we're here.
So what would be the best way to review any information from this point back? Is it to just go like on the YouTube videos and listen? Or read the notes?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
So the minutes should be on the website.
Yep.
And the videos of the meetings are on
Yeah, I
YouTube.
watched a couple
So-
before.
It puts you right to sleep, don't it?
So
It's
any-
very important stuff.
It is super important, but but that's a good way. So this group when we first formed the group, it was to basically come back to the select board with a recommendation to decide whether to go forward or not go forward. So the first time we did it, pre-COVID pretty much, the selectmen voted not to proceed. So we went nowhere else. Then we got back together again. We got some new numbers from one of the suppliers. We re-looked at how the funding could be structured and how this thing would be done. Mathematically, it made a lot more sense. Went back to the selectmen then select board. Select board then approved, at least asking the question of the voters at a town meeting. And the town meeting voted in the affirmative. You have to vote twice. So then we came back, it was in the annual, right? At the annual, to have the second vote. The second vote was in the affirmative. So now we have the permission of the town via town meeting to form an MLP.
Okay.
Which is this part of the progress. Monetarily, the select board allocated $900,000 from ARPA funds as kind of a starter money to get this project up and running.
Yep.
And then town meeting authorized up to a $3 million of bonding that we can borrow in order to continue to fund the operation until, it has the ability to pay its own bills. And then obviously we'll be indebted by $3 million that we have to pay back,
Yes.
right? So that's kind of, you're up to date.
And I have one final question.
Yes, there's no limit.
So how have is there a playbook for this type of thing, or are we creating it as we go? I get, because what resources can we pull from Massachusetts to be effective, to make this work, I guess.
I haven't been gifted a playbook.
Okay.
This gentleman has done it already in another community. Which community?
I've worked with several communities, that have already gone through it. Town of Leverett was probably the first in Western Massachusetts that did it. And they've got a very successful broadband network in place, and so they've been up and running for almost 8 years now. A lot of towns, with aid from the state followed their model.
Okay.
So, I think there's probably 20 to 25 towns in Western Mass that in addition to the traditional MLPs, like Westfield, Holyoke, and Chicopee, that have gone through and become MLPs and built their own broadband network.
So that's kind of a playbook as other towns.
Yeah.
Correct. And there was other towns that were last mile lists, right? They did not have any broadband infrastructure.
Mhm.
So there was some state programs that came to do
Okay.
that. Those playbooks are kind of available.
Yep.
One of the, one of the providers has been in a couple of times, right? We've talked to them. But I think we need to kind of a segue is to kind of take a look at who are the potential providers of this service and kind of develop our what our goals are, what our demands are, if you will, and then who can offer that service at the best, with highest reliability and best price.
Yep.
And then, then we'll have an ability to contract for it. And if we need to bring in technical resource, though, we do have some smart guys on this sub that have some experience in this space to evaluate it, to make sure it's technically feasible and workable, right? And then proceed from there. So one of the questions I did want to ask tonight, and it's right under new business, is, who are the potential providers of this service, right?
That's the question I was trying to ask you, Doug. What's the actual feasibility of how many options are there on the table for a provider?
Well, and again, this is an open discussion, so everybody, I don't want to run all of these meetings and just talk for 2 hours. I want this to be a very open discussion. So I know, Whip City Fiber obviously is one that they'd love to do it, right? They are adjacent to us now in Westfield. And I'm not being a homer for them, just they've been in front of us, so I'm just speaking from what I know.
I mean, they're the one I know about too.
Correct. They're adjacent to us. They're on the rail trail already.
Yep.
They are already providing they had a dark fiber between the town hall to Westfield that they lit up for regional dispatch operations. And we actually have installed one circuit here in town hall, just so you know, it's available. We're going to set up a demo station out front for those that want to come in and see what symmetrical gigabit feels like, looks like, tastes like. I don't know about the taste, but there are certainly others, right? Marlene and I had spoke to Go NetSpeed 3 years ago. They're in a different business model now than they used to be.
Okay.
I should probably write
And
these down.
they're actively building, East Hampton and, Amherst.
Yep.
Agawam, I don't know if they started building there.
The town of Agawam had a different deal with a different provider, but now Go NetSpeed is coming in as well, is what I read. Just what I read in the paper. So,
Yeah, well, I think when, Agawam was talking to them, they were still called Otelco.
Yep.
So.
they might,
Otelco-
now maybe it has.
Yeah, they were a public company and
Yep.
now then went private with venture capital.
Wasn't that a slower speed though?
But
I
they could,
recall that somewhere.
they were, but now they've changed it.
It
Yeah.
depends on, they're based out of Maine. So they operate a lot of disjointed networks. They have pockets of networks that they operate. So all under this one umbrella, but just in the last 2 years, with this, new ownership of the company, they changed from Telco to Go NetSpeed. And from what I understand, they have a lot of capital. Their business model traditionally is to build and own the network. You know,
Right.
like a Comcast or a Verizon.
Which, and by the way, can everybody on Zoom hear Jim okay? Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure. So when we had spoke to them, and I had spoke to them a couple times during COVID, I said, look, build it. You can have all of it, right? We'll be the MLP. We'll sign a contract. You just negotiating, right? Say, look, you come build it. We're not putting money, but you collect everything. You set the, we'll negotiate the rate for the first 5 years and you own the network.
Mhm.
And they said, not interested.
Yeah.
They were
wanna
interested
own
to
it.
have us come and build the infrastructure and then operate the network. Now, maybe their business model's changed, that they've come
Yeah,
into some
depends.
capital,
Yeah.
because, and I don't know what's the right, Whip City's the opposite way, right? They want to be an operator. They don't want to own it.
Exactly.
And while we're at it, so that was Go NetSpeed. There's also South Hadley. I think it's South Hadley
Yep.
has their own G&E. They're offering their own service now in South Hadley.
Yes.
And they're looking to expand outside of their service area and
And they already
operate
have.
others' networks. So certainly that's one that we should talk to.
Mhm.
And Doug, we had also checked into one that is in West Hartford. Do you remember that?
Yes. Wasn't that Go NetSpeed?
Was it Go NetSpeed? Maybe. Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're doing some work. in
They
Connecticut.
were coming up and West Hartford was their next big target. They didn't identify Southwick, actually anything in Western Mass, as being interesting to them by density. Obviously, West Hartford density is
Yeah.
significantly higher than here.
Mhm.
So, and by the way, Ryan, one of, just to go back a little bit, one of the overarching things that was marching order from the select board, and I think it was accepted by this group, is no matter who we do this, and it's part of the contract and agreement we're going to develop, is you got to wire the whole town.
Yeah,
There's not piecemeal. I mean, it's not going to get done in one day and you go, okay, everything turns on.
yeah,
But
everyone,
whoever is going to do it is obligated to connect all of South, following the model of what happened with, before my time here was Continental Cablevision, before you were born.
Yep.
But when cable TV came to Southwick, they contracted with Continental. They were obligated to pass every address in town.
makes perfect sense.
Because, I mean, or else, you run the risk of, certain western parts or certain more rural parts of Southwick
Yeah.
would never see service because the density per,
And that's what most
square mile.
MLPs are doing.
Right.
They're getting a design, but they're building it in stages based on interest through surveys of the percent of people that want to get the service in a pocket. So you go where the interest is. You can get them to pre-subscribe. That's great, but that's a whole nother area that you got to look into. And basically you want to, have the revenues coming in to start paying off bonds and also for future construction. So
correct.
traditionally, buried areas will usually go last because they're most expensive. You want dense neighborhoods with high interest are the best.
And we've had some newer neighborhoods actually have buried conduit already, so that the conduits are in the ground for their buried service, but there's conduit to support Unifiber if and when it were to show up. And I think of two, it was Greens East and West. I believe they put the conduits in already
Yeah.
because they knew that was
Yeah.
they were on the precipice of doing something, so they had a little foresight, at last I heard. Now, when they actually put it in, I don't know, but
Other areas, if there's spare conduit, it depends on who owns it, whether it's Verizon or Comcast. Comcast probably wouldn't have any spares in there, but there is a formal process to lease conduit in the state, but usually it has to be a spare one. It can't be something occupied. So, we might be able to get a couple neighborhoods where that's possible, but most are gonna have to place new. There's different techniques out there
Sure.
so that, you don't want to cut through asphalt. You want to try and stay in the grass wherever you can.
Sure. But does anyone know of any others that we should be talking to? And certainly we can lean back toward,
I mean, Westfield and South Hadley, are the big ones, Fiber Spring. Chicopee.
was that Fiber Spring? Is that South Hadley?
That's their service.
That's
but
what,
it's also-
South Hadley?
Yeah, through South Hadley Electric Light. They've been growing and building their own network as well as working with other towns. They work with Leverett and Shrewsbury. There's other providers in Western Mass which probably aren't interested in operating outside. Fiber Connect is out in the Southern Berkshires. He's an owner operator of a network there. It's private. I don't think they're looking to operate networks outside of their control, but it is another provider.
Sure.
There's really not a lot. There might be some private ones out there. You know, I hear different things about them. If a bid's released, then they'll hear about it. Just through that process.
I've seen signs in Springfield for a fiber provider, but I don't recall the name of it.
Next time you're in Springfield, let us know.
Yeah, kind of like how Westfield does the we have fiber.
Yeah, I know that Springfield was talking with consultant, some type of fixed wireless project they were talking. I don't know if it got off the ground or not.
Well, we got at least something
Yeah.
to kick off a discussion with some others, right? And, that's from Jess. So Whip City, obviously we talked to them early on with this. They approached us early on and they've been very, obviously interested in working with us. We have a ton of agreements with Westfield, intermunicipal agreements already with Westfield for, we're their fire department on the south end of Westfield because of their bridge that they can't seem to ever open.
It's almost there.
I love getting the cheap shots in at
It's almost
Westfield.
there.
Yeah, may we all live to see it. And, and then, we do a lot with mutual aid. We do a lot with the regional dispatch. Our sewer flows through Westfield to the processing plant that we bought. And we're about to re-sign an intermunicipal agreement, hopefully in the next month or so with them for that. So there's a symbiotic relationship with them. That being said, I was very clear to the folks from Whip City. I keep saying G&E, but at Whip City Fiber, this is not by any means a done deal. They've got to be super competitive and they have an edge in the fact that they're on the rail trail here already.
That's a big
And so the
advantage.
connection to
Yes.
them and to your point, or to that point, is like if they came off the rail trail, they could light up Depot Square, Toot Sweet, and some of the neighborhoods within close proximity of the rail trail, because they can come off of it and get to it
Yeah.
with very little pole interaction, or no pole interaction once we get, before they start a build out.
Yeah.
But then we also have to build out infrastructure here in Southwick to
Right,
support
you wanna-
more of it.
I don't know if you've gone ahead and figured out where you'd want to have a hub.
Nope.
For the center of town, ideally municipal real estate. I think behind this building or the fire and police anywhere in there would be ideal.
It's near the rail trail too.
Yeah.
Correct.
It wouldn't be that big a stretch, so somewhere behind police and fire. You'd have the protection just being in that vicinity plus town property, so.
Do
And
you have to build an actual building for it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that has the equipment. Yeah. Yeah, and that's pretty central to Southwood, which, it's just logistically, that's,
Yeah, we'd have to-
Southeast and west on the.
one of the companies I spoke to, and now I don't remember which one it was, they showed us pictures. The rack is not, it's like that bookshelf over there. It ain't much bigger than that.
No, with GPON, and I'm assuming that's the technology you guys have talked about in the past. It's so concentrated that, you can get, one and a half racks for the whole town,
Yeah,
maybe
it's,
2 racks, and you can size the structure for growth. You'd want to do that. You'd want to have, backup power plants and.
well, that was one of the points. What I was thinking of is if we actually had room in a municipal facility, whether it's in this facility or, and subject to all those folks agreeing to it, fire department, police
It's
department,
ideal, yeah.
they already have
Mhm.
generator power. They have, it's staffed,
Yep.
at least all of those buildings are staffed 24/7.
Yeah, if we have the room in town,
you know.
I mean, and it's a structure that's, pretty solid, not a stick frame building. I
Correct.
wouldn't want that, but, yeah, sometimes you can have separate access from the outside 24/7. And, depending where it is, you gotta look at the cost to get there.
Right.
You have to transfer a parking lot, that's gonna add up. towards
Correct.
Right up the pole, but.
But we already did, and this is just by the by, we already did trench Depot Street because brought the fiber up from the rail trail for Muni Dispatch. So
Yeah.
they already did that
It's kind of
construction work.
leading, like,
Right,
that's
but
an ideal place.
again, not a homer on this issue. I want to get back to, I want to reach out to, I think we'll take an action item from this meeting to kind of give homework to two people. So one to reach out to Go Net Speed again, and the other to reach out to South Hadley and have them come to our next meeting and kind of have a chat.
Yeah, I can give you
and-
a chat with South Hadley.
So.
And then one of the advantages just logistically and experience wise with Westfield, being adjacent, they've got the fiber. You want to have two separate feeds in town, especially for a town this big, just for backup. Depending how the network is created, you can go back to the same provider or any other provider that we'd be talking to operate it would have to get the Southwick on something called a middle mile. So that adds cost to the network operator to reach Southwick, but depending on the price of everything else, it could still be competitive with Westfield being adjacent. So those are the things you want to look at with costs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so you're up to date on that. Next was, so we did talk about, we have not talked about yet is a couple things that we want to look into are what grants and other financial assistance are available to us as a community our size that'll help us implement municipal fiber in the town of Southwick. So there is a grant program available through the state for a Muni Fiber program.
Oh, good.
It has to do so. And I didn't bring my notes with me. It's significant. It's a couple $100,000. And what it does, it helps you connect municipal buildings together in your own fiber network. Well, our DPW is all the way up College Highway from be a big help. The library is up Feeding Hills Road, and the school campus is also up Feeding Hills Road. That would be a big help. And fiber, right? If you connect those buildings, it's part of the same infrastructure. So that grant is available. We'll have to go and do all the paperwork to file and get that, but it's a significant amount of dollars.
So
What I
Doug,
don't understand, yes,
Doug, this is Marlene.
Yes.
I was actually looking, doing a little research, and I found that Massachusetts was given $147 million for new federal broadband funding, and this was in June of 2023. And there is an application process. It seems like it might be something worth exploring. I think you can apply through, I think the deadline was March of 2024. So I was going to try to find out more about that. I don't know if you've heard anything about that. It was
I had,
federal
I had,
funding to Massachusetts.
correct.
And to your point with the municipal network, just where the town buildings are laid out, it's almost going in all the directions. So, if that could build kind of the core, pay for the structure for housing the equipment, the initial connection to whoever that is, that's going to operate it. And then, at least getting out that far, that'll save some money.
Yeah. And I almost forgot,
The grant like that.
we have the cemetery facilities down the south end of town by Industrial Road. So they do have offices there and everything else that they use. So
Transfer
as
station.
far as your, transfer station, as you're connecting municipal facilities for a grant application, I think it's appealing because it's got
Sure,
decent
yeah,
mileage and,
even the water department, they have a well going north
Hmm.
somewhere.
east.
Yeah, east, yeah.
East behind Frakes, right? Yeah.
Oh, there, yep.
So, and they're doing a lot of good stuff already with that, but I mean, I think as far as a robust package for a muni fiber grant, I think it seemed like a ground ball, even talking to a couple people like
Yeah.
that, we would be eligible. The other thing that, and Marlene, thank you for bringing that up because that federal money is significant. The thing that I haven't been able to figure out, I just don't know it enough and I haven't read enough on it yet, is that a last mile initiative at the federal level being pushed down to the state, or is that a muni fiber project?
Actually do not feel, I don't think that one is the last mile. There is a last mile program, but that was not specified in this little article that I read.
Okay,
But it,
A lot of the additional,
all I could find on it was like 2 pages and I didn't have time to explore in more detail.
fantastic. But I think that that's something, I have read about it, that it absolutely exists. We're gonna have to do some more research and get to the bottom of it to see what the process would be to go for it. And
Yeah,
perhaps,
calling it new funding from the BEAD program. They're talking about it being a game changer for Massachusetts and the grant programs that will flow to promote digital equity. So I think it's something different than the last mile.
okay, because we actually had a meeting today there was a meeting in town hall with the regional, director of regional, or whatever it was called. I forgot what her title is. Director Goby of sort of like a rural communities secretariat. And I happened to pop into something else. I said hello, and Selectman Perone and Selectman Gale were here meeting with them, but they happened to ask me about the Mass Broadband Institute.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what they're doing, and they're still doing a lot of stuff, last mile stuff in very rural Mass.
yeah, that's what they were initially tasked with, but it may have changed. I know early on, all you heard about was it had to be last mile, couldn't be any existing competitors that could meet the broadband standards, but I think it's starting to loosen up a little bit.
And they were doing, I met with them at Mass Municipal in January, and they were doing Lord help them, another survey.
Uh-huh.
So perhaps they also could end up being, I foresee that potentially them being a gatekeeper of this 147, was it 147 million, $147 million of money
Yeah.
that they somehow get involved in how that money is going to get distributed.
Yeah, I think some of it depends on the census blocks and income areas, and you might qualify here and there depending, so it's a lot of
But-
fun for it.
Yeah, but there's some great, I mean, there are other opportunities out there. There's also community compact programs. For those that are familiar or not, the community compact was something started under the Baker-Polito administration when it first came, their first term. And each town signed up to be a compact community, and then they have different, if you chose to participate. And then they had different categories that you could apply for a grant in, and they were rather open-ended. Like one we did a cybersecurity grant, the first one for the town. Then we did a best practices one for finance. So we're due this year to look at that again, and you can apply in more than one area. I know we're due to apply. They're talking about doing another one around some other IT and cybersecurity initiative stuff. But we'll have to take a look at the other categories that are available and see if any of the muni broadband part of it is relevant to be eligible for a compact grant. And thank goodness, Governor Healy has decided to continue that program for the time being, because I think it's a godsend. Because it's really not a lot of the other grant programs are very, very structured, and you want to do this. There's a grant program, the window's from this date to this date, and you have to do this, and this. Community Compact gave some communities the ability to kind of figure out what they needed and then look to the state for funding to take on an initiative. So with a little bit of leading the horse to water, like, you know, the cyber one, for us, it was under an IT grant program, but there wasn't like three things you could pick. You wrote your own grant for what you were going to do, and then you prove out that it was worthwhile, and they would decide to back it or not from a pool of dollars. So you're competitive with other communities, but not competing with the state itself. So we're gonna have to look into the federal money. We'll look at the community compact, and then I'm certain that whomever we pick or whoever we interview and review with, their first topic will be the Muni Fiber grant program, because it's just an easy way to knock off some dollars off the top of the project. So I don't think we'll have to worry about getting it, but I don't think I have to worry about applying it. Whoever we end up going with for this project will be a helper in that endeavor.
There's, I don't know if they missed it or not, there's not a design yet for the town, is there? And there's not a contract or anything to do with design yet? Okay.
Nope.
So we also really want to look at that first. You know, you can pick an operator afterwards. Some of the operators offer everything as part of what they can do, but you want to kind of chop it up in segments, just so that you'd be able to, if you're going to put out a bid for certain features, you know, you can have that separation of the different steps.
Yeah, if I recall, we had Wood City and they estimated about 15 segments for the town.
Yeah.
For like doing the segments, would be beneficial to do like a survey so that they know ahead of time, like what people,
Let's, yeah.
or is that something we should do early?
Well, you're spot on. I mean, that's part of the design. You want to qualify the addresses so you know on you know, a given street,
Yeah.
what's there, how many living units. I mean, a lot of that data is available now through different GIS sites, but you still want to, and really as part of the design anyway, you're going to have people out
Yeah.
there. So you want to get footages in the poles and things like that. So that would be the first step for any design.
Whole survey.
Whole survey, address qualification, and then based on the numbers, then you just start to collect it together, form an area, you know, use for our town, probably up to 288 living units in that area.
What do you mean by address qualification?
So you want to know, if you have a street with, 10 dwellings on it, are there any multifamilies in there? Then you'd want to count them as two separate living units. If there's a business with an apartment above, you'd want to count that as two units, but one business and one resident. And because, you know, it is nice to offer small businesses the same service.
Yeah, is that something that was planned on to offer to business also?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it. We didn't
set.
set rates or anything, but we said it's a business and
Yeah.
Makes
residential service.
Totally makes
It's a game changer. Yeah, absolutely.
Once you have the connection there, I mean, you can set up transparent lands with the GPON networks and really, you know, segment it and, you know, do a lot of stuff with it.
When you say 16 segments,
Yeah, so if you want to, so you're going to do GPON, so you would split it up into areas. You guys know what GPON is?
I have an idea, but I don't know specifically.
Yeah, so it's a technology that exists with fiber networks so that a single fiber leaving your hub can provide service for up to, like, the standard split is 32.
Okay.
So you would have splitters out in the field for each geographic area. And for every 32 homes there, you would have one fiber going in. So 10 fibers, you can have 320 units there that you can serve. So it conserves on the feeder fiber up to the splitters. And then, but then once you have those, then you kind of branch out within the neighborhood. So different providers call them different things, fiber serving area, fiber hood. They're pretty common terms. So you get those sized based on how many, living units are within, geographic area.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if it's really dense, that's great because you don't have to run a lot. I mean, fiber is cheap. The size of it, whether it's a 72 or 144 cable, it's really not that expensive. The labor to put it up is what costs you. So, you know, you want to put in what you need and then also build for the future, but anything you can save in sizing is going to benefit the overall cost. So that's why they have the GPON technologies, and the latest iteration of that is XGS PON, where you're sharing 10 gigabits amongst you know, one segment of 32 customers, 32 homes. You know, regular GPON is 2.5 gig. So as more demand, the broadband needs increase, everyone wants bandwidth, so you want to build a network that, and all the equipment is capable of it now. You keep your splits, the ratios fixed, but then you can just.
You just like basically replace the equipment at the end of the line. You don't have to replace the
Right.
wire, correct?
Yeah, so it's the.
Yeah.
The P in PON is passive, that's what's great about it. You know, it just gets you out there, it splits the signal,
Yeah,
everything's addressable, and it works pretty well, actually really well. It's a great technology. Yeah, so that would come out part of the design. They would start doing the planning of that, figuring out, you know, how big the pockets are, and you get out to rural areas, it's going to be spread out more. So you might have different splits, or you want to put the splitter sits in a cabinet, so you want to put it in the best location so that you can take advantage of. You don't want to have to backtrack a lot and place extra fiber.
Hmm.
So there's different ways that.
Do those like sit on the pole, or do they sit on the ground?
Either or. The
Okay.
bigger ones are usually on the ground. When Verizon started doing their Fios network, a lot of them were on the ground because they were using 432 split cabinets.
Yep.
Or bigger. So, you know, that was there, and they had already done that with a lot of other equipment. Some cities, you may not want to do that if either someone's going to back into it, or a plow will hit it, or someone will, you know, vandalize it, so you can put those on a pole. So
Just curious, because I wouldn't be surprised if someone comes and asking sort of questions on like, what will this look like? So that way, you know, we get kind of an idea at least.
yeah, and the other thing, I mean, the pole's great if it's allowed by the owners. So Verizon and Eversource they joint own the poles in town. So as long as they allow, and which they should, because you put a smaller cabinet up there. And Comcast has their power supply sitting on the poles. You'll see the green
Yeah,
light when you
yep.
drive by.
Mhm.
So the splitter cabinet could be that small. So that's ideal, you know, putting up there. If you put it on the ground, then you have to get into easements with the property owners if it's, you know, on private property and things like that. So it's adds up fast.
Absolutely. And I don't have the exact split, but it's north of 80-something% of our poles are owned by Verizon, and the remainder are owned by Eversource.
Huh. Yeah, it could
It's,
be, yeah.
it's a weird mix, but
Yeah.
first time I heard it, I was really surprised. But Verizon owns most of the poles in the town.
Okay.
Eversource has put a few lately,
Yeah.
but most of them are owned by
Yeah,
Verizon.
like the traditional model is they each own 50% of the pole, but then they have maintenance areas. So Southwick Verizon would replace a pole if needed. Granville Eversource would, but things, you know, are always changing any agreement. So
Yeah,
so it may be that way too. So
and that's the other trick too with, I mean, you've seen it with it, even that project in Westfield, the bridge that I like to tease everybody about, but the utility work takes forever. And so even for this, you know, when we go through the pole process, they're gonna say, oh, this pole needs to be replaced because it needs to be 3 foot higher because the separation of your stuff. Great. Well, then you got to get Verizon to come out and change the pole. But before that, you got to get everybody else to come out to move their stuff to the adjacent, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when you go, even if you have to move, you know, Comcast, you have to move 6 inches up or down or sideways, whatever. Comcast doesn't have a vested interest to come out, hustle and get that done. So,
They'll get it done faster than Verizon.
Yeah.
Traditionally, because they're just an occupant on the pole also, so they get told to move. Yeah, so if Verizon actually does own the poles, and I can find out for sure. But whoever has to change a pole if it's necessary, that's what adds the time and expense, so make ready.
Verizon does not offer FiOS in town, so they're not competing against this.
No.
They're not pushing DSL, to be honest.
Yeah, but they're not gonna, whenever they change poles, I mean, they'll do it because they're obligated to do it if someone petitions to be on it, and they're not gonna purposely drag their feet, but because they can't outsource labor, everything has to be done in-house. So if they get, 500,000 poles that have to be addressed, it's, get in line, and make ready is easily a 1 to 2 year timeframe. So, that's part of that impacts areas you can build.
sure,
You get the whole design, you may say this neighborhood here they've got the highest interest, maybe they signed up for the service. Well, you may be waiting on, half a dozen poles to be changed before you can do anything. And the state may be able to assist with some of that. They did with a lot of the last mile towns. There's a meeting that's held with the utilities, once a month, I believe, where they talk about different pole work that has to be done, and then it kind of ensures cooperation between electric and phone and cable. So if the state, and that would be through NBI and their resources, so possible they might be able to help with some of that.
excellent. Okay, so now we just need to. So did I see someone put in chat that they were gonna take South Hadley? To reach out to South Hadley and get them to have a discussion with them? Was that you, Deputy Chief? Yes. All right. So does anyone want to take reaching out to Go NetSpeed?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll contact South Hadley.
Just
Oh, did you?
yeah,
Okay.
she's gonna do that.
Thank you.
Great. And I can take on the community compact. Marlene, do you want to do a little more research on the $147 million in mass funding?
Yes.
Perfect. And Jim, do you think we should do our own network design, or should we work hand in hand with whoever the provider is and kind of have somebody else look at it as a second set of eyes?
Or I guess if you break them into the segments, so you've already talked to Westfield. I do believe that they'll get a design done, they'll help with full applications and things like that, and then they'll also, operate it, and they'll provide ISP services. So you want to break it into pieces, and I'm assuming that they would probably present it that way as well. So you'd want to have it so regardless of who we're talking to, you can do things in pieces. So if they can help with design first, that's great. Maybe get some other bids on the design. There's some other companies out there that'll do it. That way you can have that. Then when it's time to go out to bid, you want to be able to turn this design over as part of the bid package to have it built. So,
But I guess my question is twofold. One, let's hypothetically say we have two people that are interested in providing this service, or three. And they come in, they may all have their own ideas of how to design this and
they may.
implement it, right? Okay. And I guess we might want to have someone technically take a look at any design before we sign a contract to go, yeah, that's not going to work, or, well, that's perfect. That's very redundant and very reliable and should be great. And then the other, But those operators may have their own way of doing it, like if you say that, you know, GPON or I wrote XPS PON, did you say?
Yes.
XGS, I can't read my own
And
writing.
so that the
You know.
fiber network can be designed generally the same for either.
Mhm.
You're really just changing a card in the electronics and ultimately on the house, the ONT changes as well. But the manufacturers are really making headway, so I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, you could put something out there and run it at, say, GPON speeds, but have it software upgradable to XGS PON.
That'd be awesome.
It's getting pretty good. I mean, they even have, the OLT unit. And now traditionally it was always, you know, a chassis with the ports on there. Now you can put a switch in there from some manufacturers, and the OLT is an SFP form factor.
Hmm.
It's wired. It's got all the capabilities built right into
So
it.
you can almost leverage in really industry standard networking gear.
Yeah,
ahead
so
of the
usually
SFP.
right now it's manufacturer specific, but still it's, you know, still working with, you know,
That's a
industry standard
trend, yeah.
technologies to.
Sure. I just think, you know, as far as that goes, I think we should have somebody vet a design,
Yeah.
right? Before we go and spend any real dough on it. But I think what we can do is to either schedule our next meeting and then invite one or more of these guys to come in. We can have Whip City come back again too. They, you
You
know,
can find out about
this
the
is also a new
services,
committee,
you know, and
you know, right?
most firms would be able to estimate a design cost based on the number of living units and or the street miles.
Yep. And we have that data.
Yeah.
That we had. We got it,
Yeah,
some of it from
that's
the
good.
assessors,
Yeah,
some of it we got from Whip City.
yeah.
And some of it we got from somebody else, but we had dwelling units, they call, what was the term you used? Like units, it wasn't just housing
Business
units,
units.
Yeah. Or potential connections, right? Like you said, if there's a building that is a duplex, that's two.
Right,
And
yeah.
if it's, you know,
Yeah, you
business
want
down
that
resident
counted
stuff, they
for,
had that
yeah.
as two.
Yeah.
We have a pretty good handle on that number. Road miles, we know.
Yeah.
Because DPW has to plow them.
Right.
So we
yeah,
know that.
That's good stuff.
So, and then they can kind of back into.
Yeah,
some
because they
numbers.
would gauge it, assuming that there's a pole line on every road, they'd say, okay, there's, you know, 40 miles of roads times, you know, estimate a pole every 150 feet, then start getting this.
And I think we did need to, one of the things we did need to invest in, if you will, is the official pole survey. We did a very informal one.
Yeah.
But to actually contract, to have someone go and survey every pole and tell you the height, tell you what's on that pole, and tell you,
It'll give you an
Yeah.
idea. We just went through it, in Holyoke and, you know, it was part of the early design process. So, the company that we use there, that was just part of what they did. And most design firms are gonna do the same.
but that was the network designer did it or the provider of the service, correct?
No, the designer. So you can separate it. There's some firms that'll just design. They'll give the documentation as part of that design that you can use to put out a bid package to have it built. You can have, you know, ultimately you got the three pieces. You want to have the network designed, then you want to have it operated by someone. There's companies that'll just, you know, operate it. Maybe they'll just want to be in restoration for fiber breaks and things like that and installations, or maybe they'll want to do that plus do billing and take customer service calls. Other providers will do everything, or maybe they'll just want to just provide networking services and monitoring. So, you know, a little bit of everything is available. It's almost like an a la carte type thing, depending which provider you talk to.
So like, from the previous, do we have, like, what do we actually want? So like, say we invite these people, the providers, like, instead of them telling us what we want, like, do we know what we want? Cause you know, I mean, I don't know enough to make you seem very knowledgeable, but to me, like, you know, is the only expectation we're gonna install gigabit up and down, like, that's like, is that the expectation? Or,
It's kind of the standard good or bad.
Yeah,
that people have, and, we wanna, to your point, I think we wanna have goals of having a network that's, one, gonna be good for everyone that lives in Southwick, but also something that's gonna give them a reason to take the municipal service instead of, the
yeah,
existing service
I
providers.
think we definitely wanna make sure that we have control over the pricing.
Yeah, that would be part of the, interview and bidding of the service providers that we talked to.
okay, so speed's gigabit, but it sounds from this meeting alone, like, I guess we need to figure out, or do we know, like, what does the town's involvement once it's installed, like, what is the comfort of the town? Like, because, like, I defer to you because you're on a select board. I'm not asking you to make a decision based on the select board, but like, have they said, like, do they basically just don't want hands-on?
So I think it's an excellent question, because it really does need an answer. And my opinion, and from what I took from the previous select board, this select board really hasn't deliberated on it too much,
Yeah.
other than,
Hands off.
well, they reauthorized this subcommittee and said, okay, you guys did a good job in recommending that we go to town meeting, did that. So now you guys come back and make a proposal and on, contracting and what you think is the next steps here.
Okay.
And so that's why we're here. But my opinion, as a member of this committee and as a select board member, is, I don't think that the town should have as little involvement as humanly
I
possible.
would agree.
Right? So you really, and like I said, I told Go NetSpeed before we even got off the ground, was like, hey, you guys want to come in? I don't see the town having a problem signing over, we'll do the MLP, but
Yeah.
we'll sign an agreement. You're not going to exceed this amount of money per month for the next 5 years. Good luck to you, right? You own it, you operate it. We're not going to do a thing. Now, in this case, we're going to own this network. The town is going to, excuse me, I believe the town's going to own it.
Yep.
So but I don't want the town to be the billing entity. I
Yeah,
want someone else to handle the billing. And I want to have somebody handle, somebody vandalizes a pole, somebody hits a pole,
Right.
plow hits a pole.
Yeah.
I want somebody to roll a truck and come and fix it.
yeah,
One of the things goes down, I want them to come and fix it. I don't want anybody from the town to have their phone ring ever to do anything to do with muni broadband.
okay.
Yeah, that was the beauty of what Westfield's offer is we pay
Yeah.
for the network.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of
Pay
a,
You
part of the
want
monthly
that with
fee and they
anyone.
cover
Yeah.
everything.
and so just to be clear, like, so what we bandied around a couple of price points when we were doing some surveys, we talked informally here. We haven't finalized that yet, but the only difference is if you say we're gonna charge, and I'm making it up, folks, please don't quote me, $79 a month for gigabit service for residential. Whoever the supplier is, they're gonna charge you $25, right? We owe them
Yeah.
$25.
Yep.
So between the 80 and the 25, that money the town keeps to pay off the debt
Yeah,
That's
for the
that's how it works,
infrastructure, right? So that's the involvement of the town from a monetary standpoint. Cause I mean, we're fronting 900 grand,
yeah,
right? And we have authority to borrow up to $3 million. And the preliminary number we saw was around 9 million to do the whole town. And this was a year and a half ago.
Yep.
Things have gotten more expensive since then. So it's gonna take a bit of work
Yep.
to get this done. And it's gonna take, my biggest concern, I stood at town meeting and swore on a stack of Bibles, right? I don't want to leave the taxpayers on the hook for one red penny of any of this,
100%.
right? I can't guarantee it. I said it at town meeting also, right? Stranger things have happened, but I think, to have our best chance of success, and this is no shot at the town, let the people who know how to run this stuff, run this thing, and let them, let them send the bill out every month. Let them collect the money from the people who don't pay, right? Oh, the whole thing, right? From soup to nuts.
It's a specialty, and it's not that, it's because of the size of the town, to do that in-house, even if you had the expertise, it's probably gonna cost you more in the end.
No doubt.
that's what I was thinking too, honestly.
No doubt. And frankly, we don't have that expertise in town.
Yeah.
Within town government today, there's not, I don't happen to have a guy who used to be, the whatever and I can do that. We don't have that. And I don't think we want to hire it. I think this is a service that's best bought. We're gonna own the network and we're gonna have to work with people over time to, to figure out what else needs to be done to it. Like we said, this gigabit stuff today is great. But, 2.5 gig is out here now for regular Ethernet type stuff, for regular home type, and business type stuff, moving towards 10.
Yeah.
But what they told us, and, this will be verified out during everything, you know this better than I, is, the fiber is not the limiting factor. You're in this business too, right? The fiber is not the limiting factor to the speeds. It's the gear at either end.
That's it. And you want to make choices so that it's expensive if you have to change the ONTs at the house. It's, that's a truck roll, that's someone going out there. So you want to, whatever you decide, manufacturer wise, you're going to be living with that for, probably pushing 10 years anyway.
And the other thing, and that was a good point, part of it, and this goes back only because we've had the experience with Whip City, was Whip City owns that thing. So when it comes time to, in that $25 a month you're paying Whip City, or I'm making up the number, but whatever that is,
Yeah.
that includes that thing.
28 was the number they gave us.
Okay, so in that $28 every 5 years or 10 years, that includes them going out and replacing the gear as a technological refresh, and also when one
Dies.
dies.
Yeah.
I was gonna say
The
a bad word.
routers, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When that stuff, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's,
Router or the ONT?
well, the ONT would be part of the, network equipment. So, whatever is at the hub, that's going to be married to the ONT at the house. So,
Right,
some providers will provide a router out there.
Yep.
So you just want to make sure the contract is structured so that if you ever wanted to switch providers,
Details.
that you're not on the hook for paying off all these things.
Right.
Sometimes a lot of people want to put their own router in.
correct.
Some people would want to have this managed router service. It's pretty popular now. I mean, Comcast is doing it, and it's people love it because you can get an app and you can call them, you're having trouble, they'll troubleshoot over. So, even smaller providers are able to do that capability now.
First one, $20.
Yeah, well, everything costs something, right?
Right, but it to me, it was that style of proposal was appropriate for a community our size and a community with the technical resources available in the town. Yeah, have somebody else do it.
Perfect.
Right. But no, your question was really, really good, because it really does, what are we getting, or what are we gonna offer, and who's gonna do what?
Yeah.
The nice thing about this is it takes all of that. If we do it the way we're talking about, is it takes all of this out of the equation. Oh, that's your thing, or that's your,
Yeah.
or that's hey, you're my guy. Anything that goes wrong with this, you call that number, they gotta own it, because they own it.
Yeah, and that's what you would want to have set up in the contract with the provider. You want to have service level agreements in there, how long someone can be out of service depending on the type of incident. And so, there's a lot of that. I don't think some of that, all of it has to be done up front, but that's stuff that can be worked on, during the design, during the build phase. Well, probably before the build phase.
Wait.
Yes.
Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as I recall, when we did meet with Whip City, they pretty much indicated that they would be responsible for really doing the whole thing, the design, all of the legwork. So they pretty much indicated they've done this before, they would do it again, and they would kind of take responsibility for it. And I'm not saying we have to go with Whip City, but I'm just saying this is what I understand has happened in the past. They pretty much said they would do exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yes, I agree with you. Well, that's one proposal, right?
Right,
And that
exactly.
we haven't really gotten to the point of a formal proposal. That was more discussion, but you're right. Whip City
Right.
said, look, we're gonna do all of it. it. We'll design it, we'll build it, we'll operate it.
Yep.
You just write checks to us as we go along to get the network built out. And then, and contractually, we're gonna charge you X dollars a subscriber and you pay down your debt.
And is that basically what South Hadley and Net Zero are doing, or Net, what was it, the Net?
Go next speed.
Go Net Speed, is that, or are they, or they more, they pick up after you have a plan, the other two providers?
Doug?
I don't
If
know
I
if
could-
I understand the question, but, well, I mean, so the MLPs.
One
you know,
second,
that have been
Mr.
doing it,
Johnson.
They, you know, their model's a little bit different, the GoNet Speed, you know, they're a private company that,
I guess what I was meant was, have they offered, or are they offering the same like service that Westfield has offered? We haven't even heard them yet, so. we
oh,
don't-
okay, it'd be a question to come out in an interview.
Okay,
You know, I also believe that Westfield, in the past, I know they've done all that turnkey design and they've got a, you know, quite an operation for materials and everything. So, you know, they've been through it in probably 20 communities. So, plus their own. So there's a lot to be said for that.
yeah, they've been doing fiber a long time in the town. I remember when I went to school,
Mhm.
they were doing it, so.
Right.
Yeah, so you want to see, you know, what's the cost for all this that they can do. And you don't want to say, how much is everything going to cost? You want to say, what's it going to, because the design is, you know, it's a start and a stop. So there's fixed costs for that. You know, pole surveys, make ready to, you know, any help with that. You want to kind of keep it segregated. Because the long-term, you know, monthly cost, that's really with the operator and ISP, the network.
And somewhere, Ryan, I have, and I will get it for you.
Okay.
It was kind of a sheet from the G&E.
Mhm.
I'll send it to everybody so you have it. It was a sheet from them that kind of had rough numbers around those
Yeah, I
things.
wouldn't be surprised.
And
it- this one here?
if they got all that.
Like I said, I had this sheet. This is exactly the sheet. I have it electronically, so I'll get it out to everybody, but this is, you know, it's gonna, get right to pass around as long as you get it back. So this kind of detailed exactly what you were just talking about, the different segmented costs of different operations, the poles, the this, the that, and the other. So and the total was like $9 million when you add it up at the bottom. Ballpark figures, just throwing them around like manhole covers we
Or
are.
is it post?
I was during.
Oh, it's,
Yeah.
okay. So I had
So-
20%.
Yeah. Who knows, right? Who knows? See, electronics, if you can get it, have gotten cheaper, but everything else has got more expensive.
Fiber's only
Probably
getting
2 years
cheaper.
ago.
Yeah,
And you're in the fiber business, if I remember, right? So we're blessed. I mean,
Fiber's
we're,
only getting cheaper.
Doug?
okay. Yes. Oh, yes, I forgot. Mr. Johnson,
Yes, I'll call me Jim.
I can't do it.
A question for you about, we've kicked around 1,000 ideas here and on a variety of topics. Would it behoove us to contact those towns in Massachusetts who have already done this and get copies of their RFPs that were issued that those contractors responded to? We would have their questions organized. I just throw that idea out. You pick the brains of the towns that have it, that already have it in place,
There's a lot of towns.
and get copies of their RFPs.
It's a great idea.
Because those documents are publicly accessible because it's a state agency. It's a state or it's a municipality within the Commonwealth. So it's public
Sure.
record. Those RFPs are public record.
Yeah, and some towns will have those on their website. No, I've seen some, so, yeah, they might still be available.
Definitely check that.
Why don't we
So
volunteer?
you want to take some of that?
Yeah, I'll check around.
Okay. And Mr. Johnson, can you take on a couple of those as well and see what you can come up with?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you give me the names
Well-
of the towns were involved.
Yeah, we can, I actually saw a listing of towns that had done the fiber broadband, when I was looking for grants. So maybe I can find this list for you again.
Okay,
I think Shutesbury would have it. They're pretty good about having.
I'll bet you Whip City Fiber probably has the towns that they're doing on their website.
A
Right.
friend of mine knows somebody that's
Probably.
working in Greenfield. He was asking if I was interested in getting the guy's email, so I'll hit him up and ask
Just for the
him.
Greenfield Municipal.
Yeah, I'm not 100% on all the details. My wife passed that along, so
Yeah.
I'll look more than
Yeah,
just that.
yeah, because they built theirs a little while ago, so I think it's fixed Wi-Fi. Or,
That's what I think.
I don't think it's changed, but
Like I said,
but still, it's, you know, it's a network, so they had to go through a lot of it.
I'll have to look more, but sure. Mr.
So
Johnson,
Doug,
we'll do
what
what we
would you
can to
like us
find
to
out.
do with this information? Would you like us to just bring it to the next meeting or basically?
Yes, and I think what we, yes. And my take on it is I think we should schedule our next meeting while we're all here. If everybody has their calendar or whatever, because that was been my biggest battle. I think we just want to get on a cadence of, you know, either every other or every other Tuesday or so, or I don't know what's the case. I think we should be on about a 2-week cadence right now until we
Yeah.
can get this ball rolling and get moving. Because, you know, frankly, it's on me pretty much since May with everything that else has been going on to try to pull this back together. And then we had one meeting that we didn't get a quorum, but we need to get this moving. I want to get every week we waste is another week we don't have community fiber in the town of Southwick. So,
the only Tuesday I'm not is the 7th of November. I'm available
okay.
on-
So is that work for everybody? Kind of every other Tuesday-ish?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dick?
that's good.
Yep.
Okay.
So the 3rd would be the next meeting.
Mr. Johnson, did I interrupt you by accident? Oh, look at that. Somebody put all the names right in there. If anybody can see the chat on Zoom, and I think you can see it behind me,
Yeah.
there's some of the ones that all have Whip City Fiber. Thank you, iPad.
yeah, Otis has been out in
Yeah.
Blanford, Beckett. Beckett might be wired west.
Yeah, I think I have some research.
Sure.
It's perfect.
So let's see. So next Tuesday is going to be the 3rd of October.
You're doing 2 weeks.
Yeah, let me just double check my calendar, please. I'm in town. What's that other thing? Okay, so October 3rd is our next meeting. 6 o'clock, probably the same place. Because this is so great, and we'll do a hybrid. Can we try to get South Hadley and Go NetSpeed on our agenda for 10-3 to have them come in and kind of give an overview of what they do and what the services they offer and where?
They could even zoom in, right?
They sure can.
Perfect. No, excuse me.
Something tells me they'll show up though, if they're interested.
Yeah, at least, I don't know about going that speed, but I would think that.
Yeah.
South Hadley probably would.
The Go NetSpeed guy was in, like, I swear he was in Connecticut. Like, he wasn't far away.
Yeah, it could be.
I talked to
know
the president at the time.
they've grown quite a bit. And I don't know the extent of their build in Connecticut, but I have heard there's a lot of pockets there that they're building, so. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to have some local people there.
I'll dig through my emails because I know I spoke to the gentleman, had a pretty long conversation with him back because it was during COVID and we all had nothing to do. No, this is,
Speed does Connecticut, Vermont, so.
Correct.
Massachusetts, yeah.
but I thought that I thought I read something about them being in Agawam, something
Well,
about them doing.
Yeah, I remember
something in
reading
Agawam.
it there. I haven't seen physical
Yeah.
evidence, but I know they're actively building East Hampton and Amherst. So, which is good. So they're
Yeah.
looking for a Western Mass presence. the town of Granby has always, well, not always, but it's always been an independent telephone company. So Hotelco also was running that. So that's probably called going that speed as well. Part of the rebrand.
And then, I heard that Southampton at their annual also opted to form an MLP as well. And I'm sure Whip City's all over that as well. And perhaps South Hadley, but I know I have a couple friends that live up in Southampton and they're going through the same process we're going through for that. Okay, any other business before we adjourn this evening? Anyone on Zoom?
Nope.
Okay, any other public comment before we adjourn? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
Make a
moved.
motion.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.